welcome to the second attempt at round number 5 of the Formula Racing League SuperSprint Sunday, brought to you by SIMNET, and we've gone straight into qualifying. So hopefully, the drivers who have all got a time sort of limit to stick to when it comes to leaving the pits according to their class, which we'll talk to you about again shortly. They're all hopefully going to be able to finish their lap times. You know what technology's like. It's great when it works, but when it doesn't, by Christ, can it cause some inconvenience in what is already the longest of long laps, because we are at the Green Hell, the Nürburgring Nordschleife, a ribbon of supposedly natural racetracks that is all entirely man-made from the 1920s and the 1930s, but built as a real proving ground of man and machine, and that it most certainly has been over the previous decades of its existence. Held the Formula 1 German Grand Prix up until 1976 for Niki Lauda's accident that we all know about, brought an end to that particular event. Now, Jamie Thacker, before they built the new Nürburgring, as we are going to actually go on to the 2001 or pre-2001 layout for the opening 2 minutes of it before they then turn off and go down the Nordschleife. And this is Jamie Thacker, who is crossing the line now in the Ford Mustang. He is part of the AM class, so each driver's, if you have to leave within 2 minute window. So the AM drivers get from 10 minutes to 8 minutes down. Townsend just leaving the pits behind him before he does his Joker lap. The AM drivers are in red. Then you have a minute wait up until 7 minutes, which is then the silver drivers, so the grey marked numbers, who will have 2 minutes to then leave before a minute's pause period, race period if you like, before then with 4 minutes to 2 minutes to go, the drivers in the Pro class, so the light silver grey really, they then have to leave before then, with 2 minutes to go, no driver is permitted to leave. This qualifying session is a very simple one. It's still the same in terms of the previous 4 rounds, with drivers, once they've started their lap time, not permitted to go and set another one. So if you make a mistake, that's your 1 lap gone. So it's a bit like Formula 1 qualifying from about 20 years ago, all the way up until 2005, where you had 1 single lap and that was it. If you got it wrong, you got it wrong. So Jamie Thacker, the leader of the AM class in terms of those that are out there, he's not the leader in terms of the championship period. We've got plenty of time to take you through that. So as Jamie Thacker goes through the NGK chicane at the end of the Grand Prix loop of his first final lap, here, he brings the car off the circuit and off the beaten track and down into the old Nordschleife circuit there. Very bumpy, very bouncy, and very difficult indeed for both driver and car to keep your concentration for a whole lap, because a whole lap is about 8 minutes to 8.5 minutes, depending upon whom is setting that lap time. So we will just take you now to the championship standard. We've got plenty of time to go and have a look at them, as we've got what will be, I would suspect, another 10 minutes of action from all of our drivers now. So the leader of the AM class is actually just the man behind Jamie Thacker, so that's car number 11, Greg Wood, as you can see here. So Greg Wood out in the blue Aston Martin, the former commentator himself, Greg Wood, but has decided to swap the commentary box this season for the racetrack, and a fine job he's doing as well. Because of that, he's got quite a commanding lead actually in the AM class. He's got a near 40-point lead, over 40-point lead. It's 43 points to Jeffrey DeFast in the McLaren. Jeffrey DeFast has already had an invalidated lap time, so he's had to port to the pits, as has Owen Harris. But in third position, it's Darren Townsend, who is still on a lap in the pink McLaren. They're followed by Jamie Thacker, who you can see in car number 7 in the Ford Mustang. Before then, they go to Michael Coppens in 5th. Michael Coppens in the Ferrari you saw actually going off in the previous iteration of this. Owen Harris is in 6th, ahead of Dreadlock Steve. So Owen Harris on 175 points, a little bit detached from the podium, the medal placings, but he has got a battle for 6th position, ahead of Dreadlock Steve and Miguel Silva in 8th position. Jack Barnett is 9th in the AM class, ahead of Van Kruger, who's changed his car from the McLaren that he had previously to the Ford Mustang, which we'll show you a little bit later on. That's car 44 when we show you, with Darren Davies another former commentator of this particular parish, in 9th position. They're ahead of Dale Keller, who's had an injury hit start to the season, in 10th, ahead of Jochen Verrett, Paul Trotman and Ryan Fegan, who is absent today. Got a couple of AM drivers or replacement reserve drivers in their place for that one. We then go to the silver category, who are now out on the track and actually setting their lap time. So it'll be the vast majority of who are just on their main qualifying lap, as Richard Gearman once again is in the pit. So Gearman unable to set his lap time, but 4 minutes to go. You'll see some pro drivers now leaving the circuit. But we've got Renard Serfontaine at the top of the silver standings. He's on 318 points, only 25 clear of Chris Getman, a model of consistency. The Flying Scotsman has got the Porsche into second position ahead of Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown in the Sky branded Ferrari on 275 points. Well, chucked a couple of wins away, so the Scotsman still in with a good chance of winning the overall series, or the overall silver series, but he has got to start turning pace into prizes. Terry Tierney on debut is in 4th in the Aston Martin. Impressive debut from the Irishman ahead of Serafino Gabino. Those two separated by 4 points on 264 and 260 points, with 6th position Lee Colbert on 245, making a late bid for the medals. He might be a little bit late for the championship, but he is certainly in with a chance of the medals. He is ahead of 7th place Richard Gearman, 8th place Jordan Marshall, with Luke Richings in 9th on 208 points, well clear of Marco Lino in 10th. Alexander Kalugin is the first outside the top 10 on 11, in 11th, with Sam Greaves, Michel van der Waal, James O'Leary and Maximilian Morneveg all making up the numbers in the silver category. Speaking of making up the numbers in the pro category, there's only one person who is not doing that, and that's Jared Vermeulen on 546 points. He is 50 clear, nearly 51 clear of Daniel Grossman himself, nearly 100 points clear of Mark Limbrush Tully. So Brush Tully leading a battle on 399 points for third. That's headed ahead of himself, behind himself is Othman El Fidawi on 358, with Josh Clayton on 340 and Walter Hymans in 6th on 328. Andrew Eden is next in 7th on 322, ahead of Termian van der Vaal, with Morgan Grace in 9th, ahead of Steve Desert in 10th. Fakla Poshbashil, Maximilian Basler and Fabio Travaglioni ahead of Johnny Sharp make up the numbers in the pro category. So we're just seeing now Jamie Thacker, the leading driver, or the driver that's certainly the furthest ahead on his lap, going through the final, he's about 2/3 of the way through, so he's not that far from the dirty hill. He's just come out the carousel down the hill. I say just come out about 30 seconds ago, but it's a long lap. I would expect this to be about the 8-minute 22, 8-minute 23 mark. Now, Greg Wood behind him was on a quick lap, but found the wall at the final corner, so that rendered his lap invalidated and his car pretty totaled as well. So it damaged not only him, but his qualifying performance in his position. And now you've got Jamie Thacker, who again looking pretty good in the Ford Mustang. He's had a lot more pace than his results suggest. He's got himself back up to 4th in the AM class, but with more luck, especially at Bathurst and Kyalami, he could have been really challenging Greg Wood, who has been a model of consistency, it must be said, in the championship so far. Thacker just finds his way through what must be about corner 140 of about corner 200 or 200 corners nearly. He was about just over 157, I think, if my memory is correct. But we're going now through a double apex right-hander, really tricky on the drivers because it's an uphill crested apex that then falls down in the middle of the corner before you get onto the Dirtinger, which is the longest straight by far on the calendar. He rivals, makes the Comrade straight look like the start straight at Monaco for its length. But down the hill we go, and we're expecting this to be a pretty solid AM time from Jamie Thacker. So Thacker now building. That car will be at nearly 180 miles an hour by the time it gets on the brakes. So you've got slightly downhill through the left-hander underneath the bridge there that you see. He'll be flat out through here, but he won't be flat out by the time he gets back up that hill because of the right-hander. He'll be on the brakes. There you can see on the brakes we go. Now he's got to keep it settled. He did keep it settled actually really well, Jamie Thacker, a little bit earlier on, but can he repeat the trick? It looks like he can, to be fair to him. So down the straight we go. This is going to be the first lap time that we'll get, and across the line we go to 8 minutes 22.7. That is roughly what he did before, as Greg Wood now gets around the final corner, so that's one up on what he did a little bit earlier on, Greg Wood. And across the line we go. This should be towards the sharp end as well. Where is it? It's invalidated, so Greg Wood just decided to complete the lap time there despite no material gain. Miguel Silva now across the line. He's another one who set a steady lap time before. He sets another steady lap time. He goes second on an 8 minutes 31 flat. Now across the line should be car 666. That's Dreadlock Steve. So he did a bit better than before in the Dreadlock Steve, he's caught up to a Mustang ahead. Who's that? Stel Keller is another man to have gone into the pits, as has Owen Harris and Jack Barnett. So Dreadlock Steve having caught up to the Mustang ahead. We'll try and see if we can get two for the price of one. I think it's car 33, which is it's not that, but let's see who it is as we cross the line. We'll certainly have a chance to see who it is as Steve now comes across the line, slips straight with the Ford Mustang as he goes. It is Darren Davies in car 27 who goes fourth, 13.9 seconds off the pace, and Dreadlock Steve having caught up at the end goes second in the AM class. It's only going to be Darren Townsend, or Dazza as he prefers to be called. Darren Townsend, who in car number 9 is the last of the AM class to settle up. So we've got a maximum wait time, there we are, of 10 minutes. So all drivers should and will get their lap time in. So down the straight we go, down the dirting hill, the McLaren not the sharpest in a straight line, but where is Darren Townsend going to be able to put his car as we go through the flat-out left-handed under or up the top of the hill is where we'll eventually go. You forget how long this straight really is, but we're over the crest, flat out through the left-hander. You can see the way ahead there. The way ahead is glory for Darren Townsend. If he can get himself onto the AM class front row, then that'll be a massive advantage, especially over Greg Wood, who has failed to set a lap time. Jeffrey DeFars also in second position, having failed to set a lap time. This could be a very profitable qualifying lap for Darren Townsend. What will be probably 3 laps of racing in the sprint race coming up, the 20-minute race. Across the line we go, keeps the car dead centre. Where does he go? He goes fifth. Very pedestrian lap time there from Darren Townsend, but it works. It gets him on the grid. Now, next out is Renard Serfontein, who's the leader of the silver class, isn't he, Serfontein? The South African will get a chance to finish his lap time. Obviously, this was the one lap time that actually we were on board with by the time that the clock expired last time. Now, where is this going to go? Up the hill we go. I would expect this to be right towards the sharp end. Now, as we go for the right-hander there, keeps it nice and steady going into the final complex. Doesn't want to make too many mistakes. So many silver drivers have fallen by the wayside, including second place Chris Getman in the standings. He's another man who has fallen foul of track limits. Where does this put Renard Serfontein? Puts him second behind Jamie Thacker. So a good solid lap time there from the South African. Car 134 is next, I think, behind car 23. We're going to go see if we can find somebody to set a lap time. It is Jordan Marshall, the Frenchman, goes second, 3 seconds off of Jamie Thacker. Gordon Brown crosses the line, does he? But fails to set a lap time. So Brown, who is also switched to, I think the car, is it car 334 or is it car 134? It might have been Kalugin. Actually across the line as James O'Leary now goes through. Gordon Brown does indeed go pole. Underestimated you, Gordon. I'm ever so sorry, but you and Kalugin, I'm sure, are easily confused as Bino now crosses the line. We're going to go to car 94. That is Lee Colbert in the striking pink BMW. Across the line we're going to go now. This should be a good lap time for the rejuvenated Englishman. Where's it going to put him? It puts him third. So 3 seconds off of silver pace, but he's second in class and third only behind Jamie Thacker. Maximilian Morneveg is in strife, is he? He's just off and he is in the wall, so he will be going no further, Maximilian Morneveg, and he goes into the pit. So it's going to be Luke Richings now across the line with Terry Tierney having not set a lap time. He was right in his forecast he wouldn't get another go. Richard Gearman is another man to have fallen foul of track limits. He's not going to set a lap time. So down the dirting hill we go. It's the pink and purple Ferrari down through the gears, or up through the gears, sorry, down the hill and towards the final knockings, the final chicane. On the brakes a little bit for the right-hander, keeps the car straight as he possibly can. No funny business through the final quarter, and Luke Richings is going to come across the line. This should be a pretty strong lap time for the Englishman. Across the line we go for Luke Richings. Where's this going to put him? Puts him third, so it was a strong lap time. 1.6 seconds off the pace, puts him second in class, and that is silver qualifying. I was about to say silver compensating, it's definitely not that. Silver qualifying done. This is Sharon Vermeulen, so the hot favourites for pole position, the South African, just has to keep it neat and tidy, you feel, in order to be able to set that lap time. So down the hill we go, along the long straight, building as much speed as he can possibly get away with. Down the hill now, how quick will he go? Will he go flat through the right-hander? He does go flat through the right-hander. First man to do it. On the brakes we go. Keep it in a straight line. Make sure that you don't take too much curb through there. You don't want to unsettle the car. Use as much of the track as is logical out of the final corner. Keeps the car as straight as you possibly can. And where's this going to be for Jared Vermeulen? Vermeulen goes pole on an 8-minute 10.2. So good stuff really for him. He was in the 8-minute 8 earlier on, but it'll do. So across the line next, I think, is car number 10. That's Paul Vidler, who is a reserve. Where does he go? He doesn't go anywhere because that is an invalid lap time. So it's going to be Marco Brusciulli, who was threatening the Ferrari status quo. Where does Brusciulli go? He is up into second position. He's ahead of Johnny Sharp. Car 51 is going to be the next man that we see, I think, across the line. If we can find him, I'm going to go with Damien van der Waal and Morgan Grace. Car 51 was Steve Desire across the line. He's behind Dan Crossman. So it's not going to be Damien van der Waal that we go to. It's going to be Wouter Heijmans, a rejuvenated Dutchman in the newly coloured car. Where does he go? He goes sixth. So there's a real sort of gaggle of Ferraris, about 7 seconds off the pace, and Heijmans is just off the back of that. So 133 or 433 is next across the line. That's Damien van der Waal, and he goes second. So it's an all Ferrari front row. 433 makes it 3 seconds off the pace, though he is, which is, it sounds a lot, but around this track in particular, it really isn't. So 14 is Morgan Grace, who's had an up and down season. The Welshman shown plenty of pace, if not plenty of points. Across the line we go in the Italian liveried car. Where does this go for Morgan Grace? It goes, well, he goes second. He's just beaten Damien van der Waal by the barest of margins. And now we try and see someone else. Is it Vaclav Pospisil? It's not going to be Vaclav Pospisil. It's Andrew Eden, who's just ahead of Josh Clayton. Eden goes seventh, Clayton sixth, as they both disrupt the Ferraris in the top 8 or so, as Daniel Crossman, Steve Desire shuffle back. It's going to be the last man across the line, Vaclav Pospisil, who will just about catch him, and he goes fifth. So the Czech driver showing a real return to form there. So that's, well, behind Jared Vermeulen, it's a little bit of a different grid, a bit of a mixed-up grid, as Pospisil struggled all season long in that Porsche. He's got himself up into 5th position, so the Czech driver really timing his run well in order to, I mean, he's 6 seconds off the pace, but around this track, which is about 5 times longer than every other track, that is not a bad effort at all. So, just take you through your grid now. Jared Vermeulen is on pole, as he so often is in the season 21, I think it is, of the Super Sprint Sunday, brought to you by SIMNET, with Morgan Grace in second, ahead of Damien van der Waal and Marco Brusciulli on row number 2. Vaclav Pospisil, who is going to go around to complete his lap time, I would strongly suggest he comes into the pits as soon as possible, is ahead of Johnny Sharp in 6th. Josh Clayton is in 7th, ahead of Andrew Eden, with Daniel Crossman second in the championship, starting 9th. So the young Englishman there, who has shown maturity beyond his years, not having the best of laps there. I don't know whether it was a bit too safe, but he's been caught out by the surprise pace of those around him. That is Steve Desire in 10th, ahead of Wouter Heijmans, who's last of the pros to settle that time, with SilverPole being taken by Gordon Brown, who is, as I say, 10 seconds off. It's not as much as it looks. Gordon Brown there, who is just ahead, actually, of the AM pole sitter. That is Jamie Thacker, with Luke Richings and Lee Colpitts on second and third for the silver class, with James O'Leary. Good lap time there from James O'Leary. He goes in 16th. It's a pace that he hasn't shown all season, but it is excellent, and well done to him. Julian Marshall and Serafino Gabino are sharing row 9, head of Rinart Serpentine and Dreadlock Steve. Dreadlock Steve in second, but 7 cars behind Jamie Thacker in the AM class. So he's second in the AM class, but is 20th on the grid, with Miguel Silva and Darren Davies on row number 11. Darren Townsend's the last to set a lap time, 38 seconds off the pace, but I think it was more born out of going careful, slowly, catchy monkey for the Welshman, who's third in the AM Championship, and you've got the reserve there, Paul Vidler, in 24th, with Richard Gearman, Greg Wood, Jeffrey DeFarce not setting a lap time. So 3 minutes ago for the 20-minute race. It's 8 minutes a lap, so you're going to get, it sets 20 minutes up there, you're going to get about 25 minutes of racing, I would imagine. So you've got there, as I said, we'll take you through the grid once again just to make sure. So Jared Vermeulen is on pole ahead of Morgan Grace, with Demian van der Waal in second and Marcelin Brusciulli, Demian van der Waal in third, and Marcelin Brusciulli fourth on the second row. Vaclav Pospisil starts in fifth, ahead of Johnny Sharp, with Josh Clayton in seventh, following Andrew Eden across the line, wasn't he really, in that Ford Mustang? Andrew Eden in eighth, ahead of Daniel Crossman in ninth, ahead of Steve Desert in 10th. Vater Heimans begins row 6 and is the last of the pro class to set a lap time, with Gordon Brown, the silver pole sitter, in 12th, completing row number 6. Jemmy Thacker is in 13th, ahead of Luke Richings, with Lee Colpitts in 15th, and third in the silver class, Jemmy Thacker on AM pole, as we said earlier on. James O'Leary is in 16th, with row 9 being shared by Jordan Marshall and Serafino Gabino. Renat Serfontaine, the silver leader of the silver class, having a bit of a stinker, really. He's 19th. You would expect him to be a lot further up, the South African driver. He shares row number 10 with Dreadlock Steve. Dreadlock Steve second in the AMP class, as you can see by the fact his number is in red. Miguel Silva is 21st, ahead of Darren Davies, with Darren Townsend in 23rd, the last of the drivers to set a lap time. Paul Vidler is 24th, ahead of Rich Gimmon in 25th. Greg Wood starts 26th, the leader of the AM class, not setting a lap time, but is there due to how quickly he joined the session, which is, I think, about as random as ACC gets. Jeffrey DeVars is 27th, ahead of Owen Harris in 28th, with row 15 shared by Jack Barnett and Terry Tierney. Chris Getman, second in the silver class, will be ruined not being able to set a lap time. He's 31st alongside Dale Kelleher, who was another man to fall victim to the Nordschleife's track limit. Michel van der Waal is in 33rd, ahead of Michael Coppens, with Marco Lino 35th, ahead of Nugwace, the AM reserve. I hope that's not an omen. Finn Kruger is in 37th, ahead of Maximilian Morniveg. Morniveg, who set a lap time actually in the first running of this, or was about to set a lap time in the first running of this, unable to do so this time around, with Alexander Kluge. Marcel Basler making up the final 2 rows on the grid. 30 seconds to go. So we will take just a quick drink and watch the cars as they head down to the first corner.
Seconds. 10 seconds.
So we are off and doing the green flag. Well, it's not a green flag lap, is it? Because it is so long. I think if you were doing a parade lap, a warm-up lap around the Nordschleife, I think you would probably be there for about 12 minutes and everybody would get bored. But Vermeulen now in the lead, ahead of Morgan Grace. If Morgan Grace can get down the inside and get ahead, it's a tighter first corner than normal. If anybody remembers the Nürburgring's Formula 1 layout pre-2002, where it was just the chicane, it's a tighter version of that before they then get onto the straight leading into the Ford curve. And if Grace can get ahead and maybe outbrake the South African Vermeulen, maybe pinch him on the inside of the second apex, then he might well be able to hold the lead. It's such a difficult track to overtake on, but Vermeulen, you won't really be thinking too much about the championship points-wise, because his nearest rival's in ninth, Daniel Crossman, and he's got such a commanding lead, especially with the drop score, which will come into effect at the end of the season. His worst result is, I think, fourth or something, so certainly something for the South Africans that he can just go balls to the wall, as we now come across onto the Formula 1 track as Vermeulen tries to steal as much space as he can. We're now waiting, and we are go, and that's a good start from Jared Vermeulen. But Grace is looking up the inside. You can see Marcelin Brusciulli in the Porsche having a go at Morgan Grace. That's Pospisil as well in fifth position up, trying to have another look. But Brusciulli's actually going to go around the outside of Vermeulen, is he? Vermeulen holds on to the lead for the moment, and I think he's going to hang on again, because Morgan Grace has got back past Marcelin Brusciulli, with Danny van der Waal Well, Damien van der Waal, following in third. So Brunschilli made such a good start. Now they're side by side going into the four curve. There's some problems at the back, I think, for, amongst others, Dreadlock Steve and Chris Gedman are in strife. Looking at the yellow dots, Dreadlock Steve starting from the pit lane, so that's why he's so far back. Might be a bit of a blessing in disguise, but Chris Gedman, who was quite far back in the beginning anyway, is round we go from what we can see. So he's rejoining now the Scotsman. Bit of a disaster for the man second in silver. No damage on the Porsche. It doesn't look like anything that is on there is a bit cosmetic, but well, he's got boss on the side of his car. He's certainly not the boss of this race, Chris Gedman, as he recovers. Now, who else is ahead of him? We won't get timing for another couple of minutes, so you'll have to stick with me. Damien van der Waal, meanwhile, he's having a go at Brunschilli. So Marklin Brunschilli has got past going into the Schumacher or the Warsteiner curve. Now we're going up the hill and getting towards the end of the Formula One lap. So the right-hander coming up is where they will then lead up to the chicane, the NGK chicane as it used to be called. And they will then pull off and go onto the Nordschleife. But van der Waal has been deposed from the third. He's now got a rather feisty Canadian ahead of him, Marklin Brunschilli. Johnny Sharp, meanwhile, has got up into fifth. He's got past Vaclav Poschmichel. Poschmichel actually made such a good start, didn't he? But got it all lost and wrong into the first corner. So Poschmichel drops from fifth to sixth. Now can van der Waal have a look? No, not quite at the inside of Marklin Brunschilli as they go round to complete the first sector. Fingers crossed within the next few seconds, otherwise I'm going to have a hard time telling you what's going on. Brunschilli now is in third though. That I can tell you, he's third ahead of Damien van der Waal. Johnny Sharp is fifth ahead of Vaclav Poschmichel. Looks like Andrew Eden has got ahead of Johnny Clayton too, so the Lexus driver is up into seventh. Johnny Clayton meanwhile has dropped all the way back to ninth, so Daniel Crossman's got past. That is Steve Desert in 10th. Wouter Hyman's in 11th. Gordon Brown still leads the silver class, but Liam Richings has got past Jamie Thacker. Thacker going safety first, so he still leads the AM class, but Luke Richings up into second and able to challenge the silver class. We're already nearly 3 minutes through and I can't tell you who is where. So we go down the hill into the tight hairpin. Can't remember the corner name, of course, but it will tell you hopefully then where the first sector is, as we can see now Vermeulen stretching away, stretching his lead. I think that'll be the last that Morgan Grace sees of the South African, who has not been prone to making many mistakes, has he, throughout the race. So we are now going through the first sector time. So as Poschmichel will actually drop back to sixth. Yes, he has already. Daniel Crossman is up into seventh now. He's got clear of Andrew Eden. Andrew Eden dropping back to eighth position, having gained a place a little bit earlier on, as van der Waal remains in fourth, having a real look now, isn't he, at Brunschilli, with Johnny Sharp just behind as well. Jimmy Thacker's dropped only one place away back to Brynard Surfenstein up four, so well into the conversation for a silver podium. In fact, he is on the silver podium. As off goes, I think that's Andrew Eden, is it, in the Lexus? Yes, it is. He's dropped back to, well, that must be 13th, I think, and the Lexus looking dog-eared. That's not what he wants, because he's got plenty of damage to be contending with for about 20 minutes. I know it says 16 minutes up there, but this race will probably go 3 or 4 minutes longer. So the Lexus effectively got to do a whole race with plenty of damage to that car. He's now got, it's Jamie Thacker behind, who is in the AM class, as he goes again very wide, nearly hits the wall once again. Surfenstein, meanwhile, in third position in the silver class. That's great news for his championship, because he's got past James O'Leary and he's got past Serafino Gabino, because Silva is in 19th. Greg Wood remains roughly where he was in 20th, although he has dropped a place. As he knows, he's gained a place in the AM standings. Now Kelleher is up, he's up about 10 positions, isn't he? He's certainly climbed very high in the AM class. Owen Harris is in 24, just behind. So the combative Englishman there having a look at his fellow Englishman, the Mancunian Dale Kelleher, he's being hustled and harried. I think that's Harris anyway, being hustled and harried by Maximilian Mordenbeck, who loses it. Is he round? He is round, but he's not round fully, because he's nosed it into the wall. And the German on home soil, who has had such a promising start, didn't he, before the aborted qualifying, is in the fence. Marco Lino, meanwhile, has capitalised on that. He's now up into 25th. Can't quite see how far he is. It's about 7th or 8th in the silver class. Maximilian Basler has climbed a few positions as well in the Pro Plus. Paul Fittler is fallen victim somewhere along the race, because he is out. He's already retired. Who's that further back? That is car 30. Well, it's a 3, isn't it? Is it Richard Gimmon? No, it isn't. Who's going very slowly past Maximilian Morneved? We'll have a look a little bit later on. I think it's car 13. Unlucky for some, it's Jack Barnett, who's looking very dog-eared in that Ford Mustang. We're going to go to the front now because Morgan Grace has dropped 3.5 seconds off the back, as we thought he might off at the back of Jared Vermeulen. But Marklin Brustulli is giving him a few problems, isn't he? He's second back and he's bringing with him Damien van der Waal and Johnny Sharp. So go, Johnny, go. Go is in 5th position. Darren Townsend has got into 16th position. He's second in class. That's Jamie Thacker. So the position change that you can see there is Jamie Thacker up into 13th. He's got Renard Serpentine behind him. Now, if he's sensible, he'll let Serpentine go, Jamie Thacker, if Serpentine shows too much of an interest, because that is silver on Ab, and he's got such a lead already over Darren Townsend, with Andrew Eden holding up. Well, not holding up Townsend at the moment. I think it's Townsend doing the holding up, isn't he? He's got Gabino and O'Leary, as Gabino maybe has a look down the inside. He has to fall in behind. It's so narrow here. It's a bit like, as I said in the previous broadcast, the Monaco in the forest, with no real place to get past unless the driver's willing, until you get to the Dirtinger, which is the back straight, as the only man close to the Dirtinger is Jared Vermeulen. So with 13 minutes to go, it feels absurd to say we're nearly halfway through. We've only got about 2/3 of the way through the opening lap, with 13 minutes still left to run. We'll give you a look at what Jared Vermeulen looks like, because we won't see him for much of the next quarter of an hour. Morgan Grace is, meanwhile, hoping that we don't see much of him in the next quarter of an hour, because that would mean that he is under pressure. He isn't at the moment. The man under pressure is Marklin Brustulli. Brustulli has Damien van der Waal all over him like a cheap suit. The Canadian there having to do a bit of defending, potentially, at the end of the long straight. We're just going through the sort of the double right-hander as they go slightly wrong through the mini carousel. The double right-hander coming up, that'll lead on to the Dirtinger. Now the Porsche, it's got such traction, but not much traction when he goes wide, and off onto the grass goes Marklin Brustulli, rejoins the track. Exit stage left because there's contact there with Damien van der Waal. Not much the Dutchman could have done, but Brustulli, what was third, is now, I think, 6th or 7th. It's 7 behind Daniel Grossman. So problems there for the Canadian. And Damien van der Waal has got a bit of damage, and he's also got a bit of trouble behind us. Go, Johnny, go. Go is in the slipstream there, Johnny Sharp, but so is Vaclav Pospisil. Pospisil thinks he can have 2 positions for 1 here. He's going side by side with Johnny Sharp, and he might actually be able to pass Van der Waal. They're 3 wide down the Dirtinger. They're going to have to sort this out by the time they get there. Pospisil's got Sharp. There's contact there, door on door, between Van der Waal and Pospisil, and I think Van der Waal is going to win out there. So brave driving there from the pair of them. Excellent driving to make sure that all 3 didn't go into the wall. Sharp's actually going to have another look. Is he at the inside of Pospisil? We've got 2 deep into the final corner. Now the Porsche is going to have to out-drag the Ferrari, and I think the Porsche is going to win the race down to the first corner, although Sharp does have the inside, and all this is happening in front of Daniel Grossman. It's got up 3 positions. Sharp goes to the inside, doesn't quite make it, although Pospisil leaves him room. He's going to have the inside then for the next corner, the inside for the forecurve as well. Johnny Sharp is actually going to lose out potentially to Daniel Grossman. Grossman to the inside of the forecurve, I think. Sharp is going to hold on. Yes, he does. The black and green clad Ferrari remains in 5th position. Brustulli, meanwhile, is recovering in that Porsche behind ahead of Josh Clayton. Josh Clayton in 8th in the Ford Mustang. Got a bit of a gap over Hyman's and Desert. So Desert remains in 10th position, even having passed Andrew Eden, who has come into the pits, I think. Certainly has dropped further and further back here. He's way back, isn't he? He's 36. He's had an accident again somewhere around the rest of the lap. Gordon Brown, meanwhile, leading the silver class. He's only got half a second over Luke Richings. We'll see how that goes and grows, with Jamie Thacker now 8.5 seconds back, but the AM driver doing everything he needs to do, because Darren Townsend is already over 10 seconds back. Renard Serpentine is in 14th and driving a sensible race, the South African, with, well, we say we're halfway through, we're not. It's going to be about 3 laps, but we're certainly a good period of the way through the second lap. So Renard Serpentine, the South African driver, who started quite far back, didn't he? He was 19th. He was behind a sea of silver drivers. He's got past those that he needs to get past. He's in touch with, well, he's not in touch with Luke Richings and Gordon Brown, but he's got plenty of gap, hasn't he, over Townsend and Gabino. Gabino, who I think has relieved Darren Townsend of 15th. He has. That's James O'Leary, who is in 4th position, in the 5th position in silver, 17th overall, that's busy giving him a hard time. So Darren Townsend, they're having lost out to Serafino Gabino, which will be fine, but he's got to make sure he doesn't lose out much more, because that's Greg Wood. Greg Wood is in 19th. He's got past Miguel Silva. It won't tell you that, so Greg Wood is in 18th. In fact, he's got past Miguel Silva, and he is in 3rd in the AM class. So the Englishman recovering well from what was a tough qualifying session. He minds really the fact that plenty of other AM drivers also fails to qualify. And he's got Darren Mark Davies a little bit further back as well from Miguel Silva. That's Jordan Marshall in 21st, so he is in 6th. I make it in the AM class. The Frenchman there with a front bump, and it's not in original condition. I think there's been some contact somewhere around the lap. We'll look as well at Chris Gebman, who has got past at least, but he's onto the back of the pack, isn't he? He's got Vian Kruger just behind him now, I think. Kruger, who has dropped back. Yes, he has. That is also, who's that in the Ford Mustang? That is indeed Van Kruger from a different angle. So Chris Gebman is now onto the back, really, of Terry Tierney. That's the fight, really. Terry Tierney and Richard Gearman, who are on the back of the pack. And although there's only a lap and a half to go, that's plenty of time around the Nordschleife to actually enact plenty of change. Vermeulen, meanwhile, has a 6-second lead, and the South African just has to be careful not to really throw away. So does Morgan Grace. He's done really well to free himself off the attentions of Demian van der Waal and Bruce Tully obviously rather exited stage left, didn't he, going onto the Dirtinghoer on lap number 1, going wide and losing the car there. No case for a rejoin penalty, I wouldn't have thought, because he wasn't really in control, didn't really have much of a chance with it. But the Canadian dropping back to 7th, and now it's a bit of rearguard action to fight with Josh Clayton and Wouter Hyman. So the Porsche obviously damaged and the Porsche struggling, but he might be wounded. He's not defeated in the fight for 7th position, with Josh Clayton behind in 8th, giving him a bit of a going over. But there's not much room really to fight for, I guess, really, until you get onto the Dirtinghoer. So you've got really another half of the circuit to go before you can really take the gloves off. Until now, it's about finding trying to get as much of a mistake out of the driver ahead as you possibly can, with the knowledge that you're not really going to overtake organically. Although off goes Wouter Heimans. I was just talking about the mistake there. Steve Desert must have heard me, forces Wouter Heimans into a mistake, and Wouter Heimans there drops from 9th to 10th ahead, or behind Steve Desert, with Gordon Brown, I think, still ahead of Luke Richings. Those two fighting for what would be silver honours. Brown has a championship to think about, but he's also got to make up for lost wins, having lost out at Zolder both times, but he was quite clearly one of the quicker drivers in the silver class. So the Scotsman making up for lost time at the moment, but he's got to fend off the attentions of his fellow admin, Luke Richings, the man from southwest England, who has not had an awful lot to shout about, as there is a slow car. So who's off ahead? There's a flag for the slow car. Steve Desert isn't one of them. It's not Wouter Hyman. So who have we lost? It's Josh Clayton, who's been in the wall rather badly. So whereas he was trying to force Marklin Bruce-Tully into a mistake, he's forced himself into a mistake. The man from the East Midlands in England, who was got to just limp his way through. He's got probably the best part of 10 minutes. So effectively what will be half the usual race. Gordon Brown does go off. He goes tobogganing on that curb, but he survives going into the carousel. So Scott's going to go slowly, catchy monkey, because if he can get past the Mustang, which he should be able to do down the Dirtinghoer straight, then perhaps he can, try and put a gap between himself and Luke Richings. Although the way it is, Luke Richings at the moment is following in his wheel tracks pretty much to the line, isn't he? As JB Thacker, 10.5 seconds back, but has got Renard Serfontein behind. Serfontein driving a really sensible race, the South African, to not try and get involved in any argy-bargy that doesn't concern him, with Thacker being an AM driver and therefore not in Serfontein's race. Serfontein silver, as you can see by the slightly darker grey silver in the number. So Serfontein 3rd, and this is good news for his championship, because what was a pretty tough qualifying has actually worked out okay for the South African in the first race. We've got Serafino Gabino just behind. He's about 11 seconds back, but he's got a gap now between himself and Darren Townsend. So Gabino safe 4th in class, with James O'Leary behind Darren Townsend. O'Leary surrounded by a couple of AM drivers, isn't he? So you can see O'Leary still behind Darren Townsend, who is proving to be a bit of a roadblock, the Welshman, but having got that far up, he's earned the right to be that roadblock. I can see Jordan Marshall incessantly flashing there, no idea why, but the Frenchman making his displeasure. I know somebody, he's got his lights fully on, so well, he is in a German car, so if he's got anything of the reputation of German cars in England, then that's probably why he's got his full beams on. Now, Hawk and Grace going on to the dirting her as Jared Vermeulen, I get the feeling, is just coasting this home and stroking this home. There's no reverse grid to think about this season, so you can just effectively practice for the 40-minute version of this drive in the next half an hour or so. That's when that gets back going. Gordon Grace, they're 7.3 seconds back. He's done well to keep Van der Waal behind as Pospisil up into fourth, still having passed Johnny Sharp earlier when they went side by side this time last lap. So Pospisil in the Porsche not able to make the same impression on Van der Waal, who I think does have damage, but not to the extent that Brusciatulli does. So Pospisil now, it's about keeping his concentration. Leader is on the final lap, 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go. That will be more like 8 minutes, so we'll be probably about 5 minutes into that race ending time, as Darren Vermeulen does go into the first corner. Morgan Grace is in second. Now, is Johnny Sharp going to have a move down the inside of Pospisil? I very much doubt he's not quite close enough, is he? He's 4/10 of a second back, and he has a little look, but he's too late on the brakes and nearly wipes out the Czech driver. That was nearly checkmate for their podium hopes, but Pospisil is able to survive as Josh Clayton is just limping around. So he's dropped to 12th, so he's behind Gordon Brown and Luke Riching. So that's, as we said, might happen with Steve Desert and Marklin Brusciatulli all stuck behind Wouter Hyman. So I wonder where the incident be, because Hyman's actually, if you remember, he dropped, hadn't he? He dropped way back. Well, he dropped behind Steve Desert and he dropped behind Brusciatulli. Brusciatulli looks again like he's been in the war. So yeah, the combative Canadian has had a real tough race number one, but he remains in 8th and he's ahead of Steve Desert. There's a bit of contact as well on the Ferrari, so I wonder if those two have a little bit of a chat and a little bit of a nuzzle up, with Gordon Brown now not really keen to see these two ahead of him, because the one thing you want if you're the leader of the silver class in particular is no interference from slower pros, especially when you've got somebody behind who doesn't have anything to lose. Steve Desert looks like he's going to have a run though at Marklin Brusciatulli. They both go wide though through the Schumacher S, but Desert goes wider. That's the end of his challenge just for the moment. Darren Townsend, meanwhile, remains just ahead of, no, he's just behind now O'Leary. So O'Leary, James O'Leary, who has had a difficult start to a championship that's incredibly difficult to debut in, but he's doing really well here. He's in a 5th position in the silver class. He's up into 16th, which is nothing to be sniffed at whatsoever, and he's ahead of second AM driver, which is Darren Townsend, although that might not be the case for long, because Greg Wood in 18th is 3rd in the AM class, Townsend 17th, despite with the timing screen to telling you, and with Marco Lino and Jordan Marshall, the cars behind, there's plenty of opportunity for the AM class. I wonder if there's been an incident a little bit further back, because Dale Kelleher's the next, he's 4th in the AM class in 20 seconds. A real good recovery there from the Mancunian in the Ferrari. An injury hit start of the season, in which an incident actually where he nearly lost his finger. He's done incredibly well to come back, actually, Dale Kelleher, but that's not the fight that we're going to look at the moment, because Greg Wood looks like he's going to try and shape up for a move, doesn't he, down the inside into the chicane, as Townsend not making a mistake yet. He's not been particularly quick, Townsend, but he has been incredibly clean. Although, has he made a mistake there? He did look like he went a bit too wide, and off and into the wall he goes. Now down the inside goes Greg Wood. He's got a championship to think about, and I think that's the factor in his thinking, because Townsend turns across come what may, and Wood backs out. So no overtake there for Greg Wood in the Aston Martin. He's got to be incredibly careful, because it's obvious he's a lot quicker than Darren Townsend, but Townsend at the moment holds the track position. So with Marco Lino catching up as well, Wood has to be doubly careful with the threat of a silver driver. Jordan Marshall, meanwhile, I think the loser is, I think it's Darren Davis, isn't it? Darren Davis and Miguel Silva at some point have come together, and that is why both of those appear to have dropped back, as well as Dreadlock Steve and Michael Coppins also in strife. Terry Tierney as well has dropped out. He's now in 38th. Paul Vidler is recovering as well. I think he's behind Andrew Eden. But now Wood in the slipstream of Darren Townsend as they go down the long straight. This is actually where they start to solidify their times. Down the outside he goes. Townsend, all he has to do is keep the car in the middle and not make a mistake as the track winds its way through to a 6th gear left-hander. So you have to keep going. Make sure that you get the braking just right for the right-hander there. It's banked, and Townsend does get it right. He's in the middle of the track there, so Wood having to, he's 3/10 back, but he's just going to have to sit there and wait patiently, I would wager, until the straight, because if he can get a good run onto the dirty hill, McLaren's not the fastest in the straight line, so he might have a bit of a run down into the final corner. The race time has officially expired. Remula leading by 11.5 seconds. I think the next battle is potentially in the, well, it's 5th, isn't it, in the pro class. Daniel Crossman is not quite 2/10 behind. Wouter Heymans and co have dropped back quite considerably, with Mark Limbrush-Tully in 8th and Steve Desire in 9th, still ahead of Gordon Brown. So I'm sure the Scotsman there will be having kittens, really, with a nothing to lose, a free-spirited Luke Richings behind, as Richings there try and see if he can force his fellow admin into a mistake. Obviously, Richings not really interested in the championship. I don't think it's going to be his fight this season, but he can certainly get a win, and a welcome win it would be. It's Brown there taking tighter lines, isn't he, Gordon Brown, ahead of behind Steve Desire, who has got a bit of damage on, the same, I think, as Mark Limbrush-Tully. Crossman, meanwhile, still well, within a second, I think, of Johnny Sharp. Go, Johnny, go, in 5th position behind Vaclav Pospisil in 4th. So Pospisil, in the Porsche driver there, having a bit of a renaissance, isn't he, this, well, certainly for this event, because it's been a difficult season so far for the Czech driver. Vaclav Pospisil has got himself up into 4th after a strong qualifying earlier, and the Czech has certainly started to show what he is indeed capable of. It's not been the best this season, as I said just now, but if he can have a couple of strong results here, that'll certainly rejuvenate his season, with Demi van der Waal ahead in 3rd, showing what he can actually do if he can keep it clean. So with not long to go now in the race, it says 0 minutes. I would suggest that it's more like 2 minutes, with Vermeulen now going around about 2/3 of the way through, so he's coming up to the Beloff Estes at some point, isn't he? I would have thought before he gets onto the dirty hill. Ahead is Paul Vidler. You would expect that Paul Vidler will pull out of the way and wait for his stablemate to get past, with Vidler having not been able to be a factor in this race, having started towards the back a little bit earlier on. So that's Grace in 2nd. He's got 3 seconds on Demian van der Waal, who reportedly has 2.5 over Pospisil, although Pospisil, it must be said, looks a bit closer than that, does he? A little bit, but he's got a little bit more time over Johnny Sharp, with Daniel Crossman having dropped back by a second. It's now Mark Limbrush-Tully in 8th, behind Wouter Heymans still, although he's got Steve Desire right behind the Gordon Brown, who's going to have to wait, isn't he? Because whilst he's got a little bit more of a gap on Luke Richings, as off goes Steve Desire, and off goes Gordon Brown into the wall. Brown can recover it, Steve Desire cannot, although he does get going again. Brown does get past Steve Desire, not quite the design I'm sure that he would have had in mind, and now he's got Luke Richings who's caught back up. Now, is that going to be half a second? I'm not so sure it is, but Gordon Brown now has to fight for position ahead of Luke Richings, and this is crucial for the Scotsman's Championship. Desire, meanwhile, is off and into the wall again and spins round we go. Josh Clayton, meanwhile, then might have a chance at finishing in the top 10 of the silver class, as Steve Desire recovers that damaged and battered Ferrari. Through the mini carousel they go. We're going to go to Jared Vermeulen when I get his words out in just a moment, but onto the dirty hill we go, as Brown now has to just make sure that he can pin the exit, and he does pin the exit. That's a good exit there for the Scotsman, and now I think that's probably race run, unless there's some foibles going into the final corner that we won't see, as Jared Vermeulen does cross the line to win the round number 1, or the sprint race of the round number 5, the SIMNET Sprint Championship, and Morgan Grace is going to take 2nd position. So he's going to hold on the Welshman for what is by far his best performance of the season, and Demian van der Waal is going to take 3rd to underline his pace, with Vaclav Pospisil in 4th ahead of Daniel Crossman. So Crossman takes 5th, ahead of Johnny Sharp. So something happened to Johnny Sharp a little bit later in the lap. It's going to be Wouter Heijmans who's going to finish in 7th position. So the Dutchman there recovers after a tricky start, with Marcelin Bruch-Tully able to hang on, I think, ahead of, well, he's well ahead of Steve Desert. Desert obviously having had a few issues before. Gordon Brown is going to finish just ahead of Luke Richings to claim the silver honours, so he's going to win the silver class, with Luke Richings just behind in second. So a season's best certainly for Luke Richings. Is Steve Desert, who's going to be behind, is he going to be behind Josh Clayton? He is. He's just limping that car home, so the Dutchman's got it all wrong. Josh Clayton as well has gone off and has dropped back a little bit, so it's going to be Gabino, I think, who's going to finish in 13th, but Jamie Thacker is going to take a well-deserved AM class win. Renat Serfontein finishes in 4th behind Serafina Gabino, so the South African having a few issues later on in the race. Gabino actually taking 11th and 3rd in silver, with Josh Clayton in 14th and 9th in the pro. James O'Leary in 15th, so it's a good drive there from James O'Leary. He takes 5th in silver class. Darren Townsend is going to just about hold off Greg Wood, so slowly catchy monkey for the pink liveried McLaren. He's 17th, but he's 2nd in the AM class. Greg Wood takes 18th and 3rd in the AM class. Then Marco Lino in 19th and Dale Kelleher in 20th, so a great drive there from Mancunian to get up into the top 4 of the AM class. That is Lee Colpitts in 21st, so that is, I think, 7th in silver. Jordan Marshall in 22nd, with Dreadlock Steve in 23rd. It's Richard Gibbon in 24th, ahead of Nuke Waste, the AM reserve, in 25th. Chris Gepman recovers to 26th and says hello to Luke Richings in the process, ahead of Owen Harris in 27th and Alexander Kalugin in 28th. Finn Kruger is going to finish 29th, ahead of Jeffrey DeFaas in 30th. That's Darren Davies in 31st, someone who's left the lobby, hence why it's not quite adding up what I'm saying. With Jack Barnett still to cross the line in 32nd. That's Andrew Eden, who's nursing that battered and bruised, or previously battered and bruised Lexus, in 33rd, with Miguel Silva, who has a stop-go penalty we didn't see, so I assume that's for speeding in the pits. The head of Michel van der Waal, Paul Vidler, ended up in 35th, ahead of Terry Tierney, Mark Coppens and Morniveg. So those are the drivers that haven't finished. A couple of drivers who have left the server, so they may not actually be, I don't think they'll be starting from their grid position if they then choose to rejoin. Who's out? I think Alexander Kalugin may. No, he's in still. So we're going to have a look at the remaining stragglers, if you will, with Darren Davies just ahead of Jack Barnett. So Jack Barnett in 30, well, what was 32nd, it looks like 31st because somebody's left up ahead. So Barnett's in the Mustang, just behind the rather strikingly liveried Darren Davies in the Mustang in 30th position to, or 31st, I think, as it will show, to come across the line. We've got, I don't know how much time we've got left in terms of the race finishing, but a few more drivers are coming to the pits. Michel van der Waal is now in the pits, so it's just these 4 to cross the line. Well, they're going to get their own little bit of air time, aren't they, with Darren Davies covering, and actually a really strong start to the race before we'd all petered out for the Welshman about midway through. Across the line we go now for Darren Davies, which would be, it says 30th, I believe it's P31. Doesn't really matter at this point, does it? With Jack Barnett to cross the line as well, to see exactly how he can get on for the next race as well. It's all going to be important learning there. Andrew Eden is now next in the Lexus, which was started 8th, didn't he? And it was a good qualifying lap, but it all started to go wrong very early on for the Englishman who hails from the northeast of England in 33rd, and then Miguel Silva, who's going to cross the line in what I think is 34th, with his stop-go penalty not really being added on. He's just come straight into the pits to serve that, or to end the race. It doesn't really matter either way, Miguel, what you do, but to the pits he comes. And I would suggest that with Davis also, well, he's still in the pits, isn't he? So with Silva coming into the pits, he does indeed end in 34th, as the drivers that had left, which was Maximilian Morniveg, and I think it might have been Nuke Waste or Owen Harris, but they have returned to the pits. We're going to take a quick break before race number 2, which is 40 minutes with the same grid, so double the fun, I would suspect, and certainly double the drama if somebody especially can get ahead of that man, Jared Vermeulen, who wins for the umpteenth time this season in round number 9 for round 5 of the Super Sprint Sunday, which is sponsored by SIMNET. SIMNET, as I said a little bit earlier on, they're the place to go for all your sim racing accessories, from boots to gloves to sim rig gear. That is the one-stop shop for anything sim racing. Head to simnet.com. So we're back for race number 2 of the round number 5 of the SIMNET Super Sprint Sunday, brought to you by Formula Racing League. We've got 2 minutes to go, and that gives me just enough time to talk about our Patreon server, which is £4 a month. And for that, if you are looking to join the league, leave a comment in the comment section in the chat below, or reach out to us at Formula Racing League on all various social medias. And what you get for that is, for £4 a month, is you keep the commentary rolling, so you get to listen to my dulcet tones every Sunday, plus our fantastic commentary from Daniel Crossman on Tier 2 and Andrea Mattavelli on Tier 1 for Taco Tuesdays from 8:30, as well as Darren Mark Davies on the microphone for our Thursday M2 Cup Series. But not only that, you get Chris Gebman to make you a custom profile picture on Discord, which is worth its weight in gold, let me tell you. With the access to the service, early access to the service, a free car change without penalty, and the very own Patreon servers, all part of the package. We can see Jan Vermeulen leading from Morgan Grace once again for race number 2, with Debbie Mandeville ahead of Bristolli, Pospisil and Sharp on row 3, row 4, Clayton and Eden, row number 5, Crossman and Desert. Crossman looking to make up as he did previously. Walter Hymans is in 11th on row number 6, ahead of Gordon Brown, pole in the silver class. Jamie Thacker, 13th, pole in the AM class, ahead of Luke Richings in 14th. Row number 8 is Colpitts and O'Leary, with row number 9, Jordan Marshall and Serafino Gabino. Renat Serfontaine in 19th. We'll hope for another race like he had before, where he just made his way up into the top 4 in the end. The championship leader in the silver class, he shares row number 10. Dreadlock Steve. Miguel Silva is in 21st, ahead of Darren Mark Davies in 22nd. Darren Townsend, 23rd, ahead of Paul Bidler. We'll hope for a better time this time around. Richard Gibb in 25th. Rick Wood, 26th. Hoping to get another AM class podium. Jeffrey DeFast, 27th, ahead of Owen Harris. Jack Barnett, 29th, ahead of Terry Tierney. Chris Gebman, 31st, ahead of Dale Kelleher, with Michelle van der Waal and Michael Coppens 33rd and 34th. Marco Lido, 35th, ahead of Vian Kruger and Maximilian Mordeveg, and Alexander Kalugin, 37th and 38th overall. We've lost a couple of runners, but whilst there might be less drivers, I'm sure there will be just as much drama as we are couple of seconds away from the start of the race and the trundle down to the first corner, so you've got about a minute to lights out. The drivers all line up in single file. Jeffrey DeFast has a pit lane start, so it's Maximilian Morneveg, so those two will be leaving starting the race just a little bit later, probably avoiding all carnage. DeFast there in second in the AM Class Championship, be hoping to get through unscathed on that number one, where there might be a bit of drama around, as Vermeulen now leads Grace down the hill, and they're going at 40 miles an hour, so they have to keep it as slow as they possibly can before they then get through the final S bends there and on to the old Grand Prix circuit, which is the closer to 2001 and before layout, as opposed to the most recently updated Grand Prix circuit was used Formula 1 up until 2013, with a brief reappearance as the Eiffel Grand Prix in 2020-2021. Now we've got Morgan Grace in second, hoping to maybe get past the master, with Vermeulen now leading down into the first corner, trying to steal as much time and as much space as he possibly can, as we'll wait some more, and wait for the green, which will be green, and that's a great start again from Jared Vermeulen, with Marcelin Brustulli in the Porsche also trying to get down the middle. He goes to the inside of Morgan Grace. He's blocked off there, the Canadian, so he's not able to make any inroads, with Demian van der Waal making sure to block him off, as well as Pospisil, actually. Vaclav Pospisil in the other Porsche. He's going around, but has to back out and stay side by side with Johnny Sharp. So instead of attacking, the Czech driver is now defending. They're all through fairly cleanly, although I think car 87 is in strife. That is James O'Leary after such an impressive first race. It's to the back for the Irish driver. So James O'Leary towards the back. There's further problems ahead. That's Jack Barnett. And I think, who's that? Is that Van der Waal? There's further problems ahead. Chris Gepman is round. And plenty of spins, plenty, because that's Terry Tierney. Michael Coppens rejoins the track. Oh, goodness me. And that is Björn Kruger in car number 44. So we'll have to see how that all sorts itself out. Marco Lino is through, though. As car 89 is Dale Kelleher. So Dale Kelleher has gone into the wall as well, somewhere around. I think he might have been caught up in the earlier shenanigans. So Dale Kelleher is, again, after a really impressive Ray finish position. If he was fourth in class, Mancunian going no further in a 40-minute race, unable to make it last. That is Jared Vermeulen now leading, and that is ahead of Demian van der Waal. So Morgan Grace has dropped back somewhere around the lap, but he's still ahead of Marcelin Brustulli and Vaclav Pospisil. Pospisil still ahead of Johnny Sharp in sixth position, so the Englishman there towards the bottom of the Pro Championship, but is starting to make inroads into the top five. That's Daniel Crossman in seventh, so he's got ahead of Josh Clayton and Andrew Eden. Andrew Eden actually stays eighth, but Josh Clayton remains in ninth, or goes down to ninth position. Steve Desert is in 10th, ahead of Wouter Heijmans, who's got Gordon Brown for company in 12th position. I think Jamie Thacker has dropped back again to Luke Richings, but it doesn't matter for the AM class leader, because he's got plenty of cars between himself and the next silver class. Jordan Marshall is in 16th. That's James O'Leary having dropped back, as we saw a little bit earlier on. And I think Serafino Capino has also hit problems, as he knows he's behind Darren Townsend, who's again gone up the order, been uply mobile, the Welshman in the AM class. Who's he got ahead of? I think that's Miguel Silva, he's still behind. Dreadlock Steve has dropped back, though, so I make Townsend about fourth. We won't know until the timings all update. Meanwhile, some of the other drivers from back there was Alexander Kalugin. He's rejoined, I think he was a pit lane starter, so that's why he's that far back. Maximilian Morneveg, no, Kalugin wasn't, but Maximilian Morneveg was. He is now behind rather damaged and dogged Chris Gepman. Chris Gepman again running slightly wide in the Porsche, so plenty of work to do for the Flying Scotsman. But it is only Dale Kelleher who appears to have retired in the pits now. As we can see now, Heijmans, Gordon Brown has actually got past Vaclav Pospisil, so Pospisil has dropped off the circuit somewhere, because he was 11th. Well, he's 11th. He was 5th, wasn't he? He was just ahead of Daniel Crossman and co. And Andrew Eden actually remains up into 6th position now, with Steve Desert and Wouter Heijmans. Heijmans having a bit of a troubled start. No, he's up a couple of positions, isn't he? Johnny Sharp has also drop back as well. That's the missing piece. So Crossman and Eden up a couple of positions. Clayton back into the top 7 as per his starting position, and Steve Desert in 8th. And you can see there, Johnny Sharp looks like he's bumped into the back of something, whether it's Pospisil, whose car looks actually quite clean, or whether it's the wall, which is quite possible. But yeah, there's a little bit of damage actually on the front of Pospisil, so we'll have to see quite how that shook out. But that is Jamie Thacker in the lead, so he's 14th, he's in the lead of the AM class. He's got Lee Colpitts and Johnny Sharp behind, so Sharp obviously having a few difficulties keeping that car on the track. Lee Colpitts, though, is in 3rd in the silver class, so the Englishman there continuing his renaissance in the championship, with Jordan Marshall in 16th and 4th in silver. Miguel Silva is in 2nd in the AM class, ahead of Darren Townsend. Townsend taking very much a safety first approach in the previous race, and we get to see more of the same from the Welshman. Well, Greg Wood has he's going to have a bit more time to pass, and Greg Wood is in 4th in the AM class and is in 20th overall. He's behind Serafino Cabino, so not his race. Cabino very much trying to make Townsend Wood's race. Real Serfontaine having dropped to 21st this time around, and South African does have a bit more damage, so it's not been a smoother start to the race as it was previously for the silver leader, and he's going to concede points not to Chris Gedman probably, but to Gordon Brown, who's starting to make his move in the silver championship. Brown, who has Vaclav Pospisil just behind, will have no interest, I'm sure. Brown, one of the more calculated drivers on the grid, will have no interest in letting or in keeping Pospisil behind. Pospisil is an awful lot quicker. I think that's Wouter Heymans he's going after. Steve Desert, who had such a strong first 15 or so minutes last time out before it all went south for the Dutchman, and he ended up nursing a rather broken car back to some very, very, very minor placings. Emil van der Waal is only a second, although he's slightly wide at the carousel, isn't he? He's only a second or so behind Jared Vermeulen. I suspect that gap might grow as the South African does what the South African does. But van der Waal, who was 3rd last time, wasn't he? So very strong finish last time out, as Johnny Sharp has gone further backwards, has he? But only to 15th, so no dramas immediately for the dog-eared Ferrari. You can see there he's got Jordan Marshall in 16th behind him, so it's going to be silver on pro. So Vermeulen over a second, I would have thought, ahead of Van der Waal, who was underlining a pretty good finish last time out in 3rd position. So Van der Waal, having not backed up his obvious pace with any kind of results, Van der Waal this season, he's way back when he should really be in the top 3 or 4, especially given his pace in Kyalami, where he could have won either race, but not for a couple of mistakes. Morgan Grace is another man to have not backed up all of his pace with the results to expect, or you would expect, but he's in 3rd position, and that is Bruce Tully, who is being rather a going over by Daniel Crossman, the young Englishman, who's probably the youngest driver on the grid, is certainly schooling some older heads, and he's certainly going to see, as I say that, off and into the weeds he goes, into the wall. He just clipped too much curb, and the curse of the commentator is alive and well. It's curse of the commentator on the Taco Tuesday Tier 2 commentator, but he's dropped to 6th now behind Andrew Eden. He's got Josh Clayton for company, and that Ferrari's going to be a nightmare. Josh Clayton now goes off. I don't know whether he's caught out by the Ferrari of Daniel Crossman, but he's off and goes lawn mowing, and he's got to go lawn mowing some more. But there's some damage there to the Ford Mustang, and it's not been the Leicestershire-based driver's best event, has it? He's had no luck whatsoever. He drops back behind, I think that's Vaclav Pospisil, so he dropped to 11th, and Lou Richings there is all over the back of him and has a slightly better functioning car, I would have thought. So who's that at the lead of this group? It's Brown, it's Steve Desert. Steve Desert has got company with Daniel Crossman now proving a bit of a roadblock. That Ferrari's going to be very slow in a straight line, and from what was challenging Bruce Tully for 4th, he's going to be challenged certainly by Steve Desert for 8th place, isn't he? No, that's 7th, isn't it? Clayton is off behind as well, so it could be possibly 6th with Bruce Tully. It's not updated, which is not helping, so it's 4th Bruce Tully, 5th Eden, so it's going to be 6th Steve Desert as Gordon Brown comes past as well. That Ferrari of Daniel Crossman certainly hampered and hobbled in a straight line. He's let Heymans go through, he's let Gordon Brown go through. Brown now having a look up the inside of Steve Desert. Not really your fight, Gordon, but you crack on and give us some fun. Now, Desert is going to survive, is he? Although he does go slightly wide. Now Brown's going to have a look potentially down the inside. He's got Heymans to his left. Heymans to the middle. No, Heymans is going to have to tuck in and maybe go to the outside. He's going to try and follow Gordon Brown through. Daniel Crossman has come into the pit, so he's got a bit of time to fix some damage. Gordon Brown gets past Steve Desert for what will be 6th position, and Wouter Heymans up ahead of Steve Desert for what is 7th. He's got Josh Clayton behind, although not for much longer, because Vaclav Pospisil is able to nudge through out of turn number 2, and he's going to have the inside for the full curve, and I think that that's going to be job done for Vaclav Pospisil, although Clayton is going to hang it round the outside and go to the inside for the full curve. Is he? Pospisil leaves him room, but the Porsche should have, with its better traction, a little bit more of an advantage going to the Dunlop curve. Though Clayton says he's having none of that. He's going to try and go to the inside for the Dunlop curve. He's going to have the inside the Mustang, but Pospisil is able to brake later and is able to hang on now. That is Luke Richings in 11th. He's 2nd in class, and he's now seen 3 or 4 pro drivers be put between him and his object. Lee Colpitts is just behind as well. So Lee Colpitts is in 12th position, as Daniel Crossman showing him 15th, but that's going to be a lot further back by the time the Englishman is done in the pits. Chris Gebman's still hobbling back to the pits, so his race already done, you would have thought. Lee Colpitts, though, his race is definitely not done. He's 3rd in the silver class. He's 12th overall. Jamie Thacker behind in 13th. Must think his Christmas is to come at once, because he's got a hobbled Johnny Sharp behind him in 14th, or what will be, what is 14th. And Miguel Silva, who has dropped back a fair bit, but he's got a huge gap over Darren Townsend. Townsend's safety first approach has kept him ahead of Greg Wood, but it has cost him time to, that's Miguel Silva in the Ferrari ahead, I say ahead, well ahead, with Serafino Cabino having got past a little bit quicker than he did last time. So Cabino, the Italian, is up into 4th in class, or remains in 4th in class, but he's 17th on the road, and he's now got a bit of licence to get away from Townsend, who's holding up Wood, he's holding up Serpentine. This is where it gets really tricky if you're into class racing, because especially round such a narrow, such a difficult track to overtake on, he's got to wait pretty much 4 minutes to try and get past Serpentine. He's going to have a run, though, at Greg Wood that's ill-advised, Renard, so you're going to have to get out of that one. It's single file through here. A little bit of contact there, I think, between the two, but all's well that ends well. We've got Owen Harris behind Greg Wood as well, so Wood in 4th in class, Harris in 5th in 21st, with Serpentine the meet in the former commentator sandwich. Marco Lino is in 22nd ahead of Terry Tierney. Tierney making rather a better fist of it than he did in race number 1, the Irishman, who's had a very strong debut season so far, but the Aston Martin is coming, or had come a cropper earlier on, to the unique travails and trials of this particular circuit. So that's Wouter Heymans got past Gordon Brown. So Gordon Brown is dropped to 7th. Not really going to cost him too much. He's just going to have to just keep it pointing in the right direction and make sure that when the fight does come from Luke Richings, that he's ready. Don't go damaging yourself too much, Gordon, because that's not going to be helpful for your championship battle. It's Steve Desert behind as well. Desert ran really strongly until he very strongly put himself in the wall in race number 1. So what was a top 8 finish was very quickly curtailed from that point on, and he's got Vaclav Pospisil, who's recovered in that Porsche rather well, in 9th position, 8th in class, and Josh Clayton having got that rather hobbled Ford back under control. And the damage only to the side of the car, not an awful lot of damage, just a little bit of superficial damage that won't be affecting him too much. And Luke Richings, Lee Colpitts there, spins nearly into the wall, but the BMW is able to just about get hold of it. And of course we didn't see that. And off goes Josh Clayton. I was just saying how he was keeping himself in the hunt, and in the hunt he is no longer, because he is off and into the pits, and that is some rather significant damage on the Ford. So he drops out of the top 10. That completes a rather miserable race and a rather miserable evening for Josh Clayton. He's going no further, certainly won't be going any further with any kind of meaningful points, but it does create a bit of a gap for Luke Richings and Lee Colpitts to keep their silver podium hopes alive. Not going to have to worry about another probe in front of them. They've got actually a little bit of a gap now between themselves and Gordon Brown, with 13 minutes gone, and nearly halfway through the race, with 1.5 laps completed. So plenty of time for the drivers, even if it's not plenty of laps. It's how long this track is. plenty of time for the drivers to sort themselves out. It's about keeping yourself in it, really, until the end. And Lee Colpitts and Luke Richings both doing an expert job of that. Two pink shod cars, Richings with a little bit of purple on his Ferrari and Colpitts with a mustard yellow stripe going through the middle of his BMW. And it's been a return to form for both drivers. Excellent so far. Johnny Sharp, meanwhile, is stuck behind, or no, not for much longer. He's up into 12th, it will be. He's got past Jamie Thacker, who didn't mind that at all, quite frankly, with Miguel Silva having dropped back, way back behind Serafino Gabino. Gabino was 8.5 seconds behind, so the Ferrari's had some dramas, hasn't he, around the midway point of the lap. And Miguel Silva drops to, well, he was 15th. I suspect that he won't be. I suspect that he'll still be 15th, won't he? Because Clayton is in the wall and now well out of the race, and Silva is behind Serafino Gabino. Owen Harris has got past both Greg Wood and Marco Lino. I think that's Greg Wood just behind, so Lino has got back ahead as Wood nearly takes a bite out of the McLaren in his stableweight's rear wing. That's Rinart Serfontein behind them, so South African having to bide his time just a little bit more with regards to the damage. There's Darren Mark Davies is in 20th, 5th overall, the Welshman, doing a stellar job really, ahead of Richard Gibb and Terry Tierney. So good driving so far from the experienced Welshman. Not had as much luck as he would have hoped this season, but this would represent a real upturn in luck and performance as Serfontein does. Off goes Owen Harris, and into Owen Harris goes Rinart Serfontein. Greg Wood is off as well, so that's 3 cars gone, and that's 2 strong AM Championship contenders. Well, certainly 2 strong AM podium contenders gone, and Greg Wood, his championship, is going to suffer a bit here. This might have to be his drop round, but Greg Wood having to spin the car back around, and that car has got plenty of damage. I don't know quite how he got took out, whether he just got a little nick from Owen Harris, who spins off, and Wood's impacted, isn't he? I think so. Serfontein, he's dropped back behind Darren Davies, who did give him just a little clump, didn't he? Not a huge one, it must be said. As off goes Terry Tierney, but recovers well to stay ahead of Richard Gibb, and the Irishman there doing a stellar job. It's time to keep that car all pointing in the right direction. But so Greg Wood is hobbled. He's back to, I would say, about 20, probably 21st. That's Owen Harris as well. Look at the state of that McLaren. He's going to have to pit, isn't he? That's Jack Barnett as well, isn't he? He's back with plenty of damage there, as well as we've got then a few recoveries. So that is Daniel Crossman with Vian Kruger about 35 odd seconds behind. So Crossman's just got to keep going because he might get rubber the green like he had with Josh Clayton a little while ago. Alexander Glugner, Maximilian Mordeweger also in the pits, with Chris Gebman probably last on track. Jordan Marshall, Coppens, O'Leary from his earlier travails also dropped, having also dropped back. So let's go to the lead group now. Say the lead group. The leader of the silver group is Gordon Brown. He has got Wouter Hyman ahead by 6 seconds. So Marco Brustulli has dropped back, hasn't he, behind Andrew Eden. So Eden going much more strongly in the Lexus this time around. Zare, meanwhile, where's he dropped back to? He's dropped back behind Poshbashil. Luke Richings is having a go at Steve Desire. So this is Silver on Pro. To the inside goes Luke Richings. He's got Desire to his left. He's got Desire behind him now. Good move for 9th place for Luke Richings. And now that puts another car between himself and Lee Colpitts. Lee Colpitts in the BMW, who snakes his way out of the second corner to rejoin the old Formula 1 circuit and into the 4 Cup. So he's 11th. And he's 3rd in the silver class. He's got plenty of time between himself and Johnny Sharp, who that Ferrari looking ever more the worse for wear, isn't he? With Jamie Thacker behind. Thacker, it must be said, is doing an excellent job. He's got 16.5 seconds between himself and the next AM class driver. That is Miguel Silva, and that is some stellar work. So Greg Wood is going to continue. I think Owen Harris is, well, no, Wood is off and into the weeds once again, so he's going to have to come back into the pits. As is Owen Harris. Terry Tierney's come into the pits. Oh no, the Irishman was doing such a good job and he's got to fix some damage now. I suspect that could be some pretty heavy stuff. It's been passed by Richard Gibb, and the good news for him is that he can repair it if he's not going to catch it, because he's got Marshall and O'Leary over 2 minutes nearly behind. So it would make sense to do it now rather than, sort of limp on. If he can just go out and set some clean laps, speaking of someone setting clean laps, that's not Owen Harris at this moment in time. The McLaren limps his way through, and he was in podium contention, wasn't he, in the AM class? But that is going to be a rather sorry sight as Daniel Crossman now gains almost a minute on the former commentator, and he's going to pass Terry Tierney, he's passed Owen Harris, he's going to pass Greg Wood, who is still in the pits, as is the Lamborghini. That is Maximilian Mourneweg. So Tierney leaves the pits having fixed his damage, and they give the lead. That is Jared Vermeulen. Vermeulen now 8 seconds clear of Damien van der Waal. So van der Waal's got 4 seconds on Morgan Grace. So Grace in third position to back up what was a really impressive second position earlier on, if he can maintain. He's got 10 seconds thereabouts. He's over Andrew Eden, who's got Marcelin Bruchtulli hunting him down once again. Bruchtulli wants his 4th place back, having lost it earlier on. Having been roughed up a little bit in the first corner. The Canadian, who's not a fan, doesn't take that lying down. He's not a fan of being overtaken. It's no racing driver is. But one of the more aggressive drivers on the grid, Bruchtulli, is going to want to have something to say about the possession of 4th position. So Gordon Brown is just behind Wouter Hyman. So he was about a second behind. It's a little bit more, I would suggest. But the Ferrari serving Brown well in the silver class this time. He's got 3 seconds between himself and Hyman. He's got a bit of time between himself and Pospisil. Smakla Pospisil up into 8th ahead of Steve Desert. So Steve Desert is 8th in class, but he's 9th overall. And Luke Richings, having tried to pass a little bit earlier on, in fact having successfully passed a little bit earlier on, is somewhere ceded that position, and he's got 3 seconds on Lee Colbert. So I would suggest perhaps not going to threaten him on pure pace, but the Brit, known for his consistency, is doing just that, isn't he? With 3rd position in class, 11th overall, this would be a real uptick in form for the Englishman, who actually had a really strong, especially in race number 2, Snetterton. He won the silver class. He was just behind Greg Wood on that occasion, but Greg Wood in the AM class, and the AM winner that day didn't really matter so much, but he did finish in the top 10 overall. So Colpit's there doing a little bit more of what we know he can do. That's Johnny Sharp in 12th position. He's got a second and a half apparently over Jamie Thacker. It looks about that, and I have to say apparently because these timings update every 2.5 minutes or so, such is the wonderful way in which ACC's sector times work. But that there is Jamie Thacker, and I must emphasise this. He's doing a brilliant job in the lead of the AM class. He's got a decent gap over Serafino Cabino. That gap is coming down, but Cabino not in the mood to do anything silly, and certainly Thacker not in the mood to do anything silly. Miguel Silva is 16 and a half seconds behind Jamie Thacker in second, and it's a real good drive from Miguel Silva. He's not always had the luck, the Luxembourg driver, and has not always been able to be towards the sharp end, but this is what he can do. So the Ferrari, they just keeps it out of the wall there. He nearly goes in the wall midway through the lap. That's not what you like, as Chris Gebman is once again in strife around the back of the circuit. So the Porsche, once again, having recovered earlier on, it's not been the championship contenders' best race. And so I mentioned the drop scores a little bit earlier on. You do get one free drop score in your, as Gebman there nearly has another accident, you do get one drop score in your championship. That gets taken away at the end. That's your worst result, as Andrew Eden has dropped back to Marcelin Bruchtulli. He's dropped back to 5th, and Bruchtulli's up into 4th. So Bruchtulli gets his way and gets back past into 4th position. As off goes Andrew Eden. Oh, disaster once again for the Lexus. He's dropped from 4th to 5th to 6th to 7th to 8th. That's Steve Desert reversed into the wall. He's given himself more damage. I think Richings coming through. The Colpit's coming through. I think now's going to be the time for Eden to try and spin his way back around, but the Lexus is about as damaged as Andrew Eden's top 5 hopes are, because that's Johnny Sharp now coming past. Or is he? No, not quite, but it's going to be El Damagico for those two, as Johnny Sharp now goes off, and he just about manages to keep the car going. But Eden, who was 5th, has dropped to 11th, and he might have more trouble coming his way, because that's Johnny Sharp right behind him, and that's Jamie Thacker. Thacker won't be getting involved in any nonsense unless he can quite clearly get past. But Sharp, this is for class position. So Eden there having dropped off again. It's not been the best of a couple of minutes for Andrew Eden, but the Lexus driver there getting into all sorts of trouble with the narrow walls, just once again biting the Lexus. As down the inside goes Johnny Sharp. I think he's going to have the position. Yeah, the Lexus there struggling with so much damage and so little grip, as Vermeulen now is off down the Dirtinghoer, and he's got a 10.5 second lead. Now I would make this with 2 laps to go, I would suggest. So he'll be, once he crosses the line anyway, it's about an 8 and a bit minute lap. We'll just see what the best lap times are for Vermeulen. It's 2 valid laps. Yeah, 8 minute 14, 8 minute 10. So the Ferrari driver there with 16 minutes to go, I would suggest it'll be a 5 lap race. So that's Damien van der Waal in second position, 10.5 seconds back. That is Morgan Grace in third. He's 6 seconds off the back of van der Waal, but he's got a big old gap ahead of Brush Tully. Car number 94 is in the wall. Who is that? As we can try and see who it is. No, nothing doing at this moment in time. I think it's Lee Colpitts. Oh, Lee Colpitts is now the latest of all victim to the Nürburgring Nordschleife's difficult manner. But I think, so where's he dropped back to? I think he's dropped back to, he's behind car number 19, but that doesn't tell me an awful lot. So he's 14th. So he's just clear of Miguel Silva. He's actually only dropped 1 position. He's dropped 1 position in class, but that car tells me, looking at the state of it, that he'll have to work quite hard to keep that going. He's got a decent gap ahead of Marco Lino and Richard Gearman in 16th and 17th. That'll be 5th and 6th in class they are at this moment in time. But Lee Colpitts there having dropped back and somehow put himself in the wall. You can see there right behind him, that is Miguel Silva. Silva looking an awful lot more coherent in his vehicle, and that is nothing on the driver but everything on the state of that car. So the BMW is going to pull to the left hand side. Miguel Silva is going to go to the right hand side, and I think Colpitts will be coming in for a quick pit stop for that damage, because the BMW there being more than a little bit hobbled, as the pink BMW you can see there having no speed in the straight. So I suspect that he might come in and pit and see if he can fix that damage, but he's got Lino behind in silver, and then Richard Gearman before then. A huge gap all the way back to James O'Leary. So he can come in and he can fix that damage. He'll lose probably only the 2 positions that he's going to lose anyway. So into the pits he comes, and we'll see exactly how that gets fixed. But yes, Marco Brush Tully now 15 seconds back from 3rd position, Morgan Grace. That's Hyman's 3.8 seconds behind, and that is 5th position for Wouter Hymans. 6th position, Gordon Brown. Brown has got a bit more of a commanding lead over the 2nd place silver car, which is Luke Richings. It's been a really good performance from Luke Richings, though he's in the top 10, having been 2nd overall, having been 2nd in the silver class earlier on. This is Gordon Brown, who's got Vaclav Pospisil behind. Pospisil not known for his stupidity when it comes to dark moves, so Pospisil following Brown rather dutifully at this moment in time. He's got 4 seconds between himself and Hymans, and no need for any silliness here. If Pospisil can get past cleanly, he will, but Brown has a rather commanding position at this moment in time. Luke Richings, though, has got back past the Desert. So that battle over just pride really is going on and on and on. So Desert has dropped back behind Luke Richings, so he drops to 9th position. He remains in 7th in the Pro class. Luke Richings remains in 2nd in the Silver class, and this fight might just cost him a chance at victory in the Silver class, Luke Richings, but it is nice if he can to finish in the top 8, so you really get why he's doing it. Johnny Sharp, meanwhile, is up into 10th overall after the issues that befell Lee Colpitts, who's still in the pits, and Andrew Eden able to get back going and recover, even if he is somewhat hamstrung by the damage that's been sustained to that Lexus. Jamie Thacker, once again, he's in the top 12, but once again, it's an excellent performance in the AM class. He's keeping it nice and tidy, and whilst he is being caught by Gabino, there's no 2 ways about it. He's got 22 and a half seconds over 2nd place in AM, Miguel Silva. Silva, who's actually doing a really good job himself in 14th overall, is he's got plenty of gap between himself and Marco Lino. He's not made any silly mistakes, and second in the AM class is certainly a good return at this moment in time. And in third, we still have Darren Davies, who's got a huge gap between himself and Jack Barnett. I say they nearly cursed him there. It'll have been the second set of commentators that have cursed in this race, but he's still in 18th. He's still third overall. He's got a decent... Okay, he's a little bit far back from Miguel Silva now, but he's still got half a minute over Jack Barnett. Barnett, who himself is doing a good job in difficult conditions, I think it's fair to say, looking at the state of that Mustang. Jack Barnett in fourth in the AM class, and is currently being hunted down by the recovering Daniel Crossman. He's got past the head Paul Vidler. There's a few more drivers who have dropped out permanently, but Crossman there not able to... He's not going to make an impact really on anybody in his own class, but he might just be able to just get past Jack Barnett, maybe set about Darren Davies, although they probably won't find much in the way of competition there. Lee Colpitts, meanwhile, where is he going to drop back out behind? I think he's behind... He's ahead of James O'Leary, so he's not lost. He's lost the two positions that he would have lost anyway, so that is Serafino Gabino and Marco Lino and Richard Gimmon. So they're the positions that he would have lost anyway, Lee Colpitts. So he's dropped to sixth, so not a disaster, but when you were fighting for the podium, as he was earlier on, he was fighting for second place in the silver class before he had his little off and went into the wall. Then that's what a mistake around here can cost you. Gordon Brown has lost out to that lap Pospisil. As I said earlier, no point in fighting that. Pospisil is quite clearly quicker, although Brown is going to have another look, potentially going through the miss section. And that is Pospisil there being caught. Is he by Brown? Yes, he is, but again, no need for any silliness. Luke Richings is a good 5 seconds back. So he's dropped back behind Steve Desert. So those two... certainly a bit of a tit-for-tat squabble, so Brown and Pospisil would do well to settle down and get away from each other, and will get away certainly from the battle between Richings and Desert. Pospisil up into sixth position. It's confirmed now by the timing screens at long last, and 5 seconds between Brown and Desert, 6 seconds between Brown and Richings, which is the gap that he'll be interested in, because he wants to make sure that he can get away from Luke Richings without any issues without any foibles and problems as regards to the rest of the race. Now, let's see if there is a battle. I think the battle is potentially Richard Gearman, who's got past Marcolina now. So no battles there, but Jack Barnett's been passed by Daniel Crossman, so that is fairly null and void. You've got Darren Mark Davies a little while ahead of him. The car 334 is Alexander Kalugin, because Kalugin has been lapped to that end, but we're just trying to see if we can get the minivan. Well, it is probably going to be Richings versus Desert and Brown versus Pospisil. We'll keep an eye on that, but Wouter Heijmans has got to within 2.5 seconds of Markelin Brush Tully, so that's one that is full position in class. It's not just overall. So this one, there's a points paying position at stake here. Heijmans, if he's not careful, he'll have Pospisil behind it. Pospisil could finally get himself free of Gordon Brown, although there is a little bit of laggage involved with Heijmans there, a little bit of ping as with Markelin Brush Tully. But we can see there that it is 2.5 seconds at the moment, although it doesn't look like that on the timing. So where are they? Well, they're going down towards the Döttinghoe, so the next time will be, I would suspect, the start-finish line, which Jared Vermeulen is going to cross and will start his last lap within the next 30 seconds or so. So Heijmans now going through the final couple of corners the final couple of corners before that big long straight, the Döttinghoe, where the Ferrari should be able to stretch its legs. He should be able to get onto the back of the Porsche, so the Porsche does have really good traction, which might just boost its straight line speed. So 2.5 seconds it currently is at the moment. We'll go back to Gordon Brown, who's dropped back a little bit further from back lap Pospisil. Steve Desert, who has certainly not got the way from Luke Richings. Richings again challenging the Dutch Prince Desert and challenging Steve Desert to hold on to 8th place. In fact, he's really just taking it from him. He goes to the outside. Over the crest we go, and is he going to be able to hold on? He is. Desert drops in behind and Luke Richings there before they even get to the final couple of corners towards the Beloff S's, I do believe. And that is going to be 8th position for Luke Richings. So Richings taking obviously a position off of Steve Desert, but if he can get away, he might be able to challenge Gordon Brown on the last lap. So Brown's just about to cross the line now, so he's 2 seconds behind Poshbashil, so that seems done. But Richings there 6.5 seconds back. That's the problem when he's been fighting. He's cost himself probably, I would suggest, a shot at Brown, unless Brown can or does make a mistake. But the Sky branded Ferrari has not looked like doing so far. 7th position for Gordon Brown is a welcome return to form after a difficult Snetterton, but an even worse Solder. Certainly showing that he's got a say in this championship now. Renard Serfontaine as well has dropped back to 24th, isn't he? So whereas he is 9th in class, so he's going to drop this run. Johnny Sharp is in the pits, and that's the Ferrari's race done, you would have thought. So what was a top 12 is now very certainly retirement for Johnny Sharp, who was coming to the pits after too many scrapes with the wall. And Serafino Gabino having 1 or 2 scrapes with Andrew Eden and Jamie Thacker. Eden not really racing for position here, with Thacker having dropped. He's 28 seconds back off of the next car, but importantly, I said this earlier on, he's got a huge gap over Miguel Silva. So you can see with the red numbers, they're the AM drivers. Thacker leading the AM class by a country mile. He's got about 29.5 seconds on Miguel Silva, who is 2nd in class, doing a stellar job himself, although he's just lost out to Richard Gearman. That's not going to cost him anything in terms of position in class. It might just cost him a little bit of time, but he's got then a further 15 seconds on Darren Mark Davies. So 3rd position for Darren Mark Davies at this moment in time in class. He's 16th overall with 4.5 minutes to go. This will be the last lap. He's got probably 2 minutes behind thereabouts Jared Vermeulen, but that's all he needs to be honest. If you're within 2 minutes of him, as I won't even bother trying to do the maths, but if you are within 2 minutes of him in the AM class, then it's certain you'll be doing quite well around the Nürburgring Nordschleife, which is obviously, as I said, the test. It's almost like a rally stage, but you're trying to pass for position. It's a bit like a time trial. As Jack does showboat there, nearly loses it on the entrance to the... He's in the midway point, isn't he? But on the entrance through to the tight sort of chicane that you go into, forget the names. I'm very sorry. It's 157 corners. I can just about remember 12 of them. So, but he does nearly lose it there. And if he was to lose it, well, he would spice up the last lap or so. Got nearly, just over 3.5 minutes to go, plus however long it does take, about a minute and a half extra, I would have thought, to complete the race. Van der Waal has just gone off slightly himself, but managed to keep it all pointing in the right direction. And Morgan Grace, as Darren Mark Davies goes into the pits, I don't know whether he's been disconnected or whether or not he has crashed, but the Ford is in the pits, and what was 3rd position in class is very sadly retirement. That is disaster for the Welshman, who has been dropped off the jacks. I wonder if there's been a collision somewhere, but the bottom line is he is out of 3rd position and out of the race. And Jack Barnett in the not exactly original condition Mustang, it must be said, he's going to take 3rd position in class. So Jack Barnett, by keeping things going and keeping it all pointing in the right direction, is going to take 3rd position, barring any hiccups, in AM class. He's got 23 seconds over Dreadlock Steve, who's going to have bother from Lee Colpitts behind. Colpitts, who had his earlier adventure, but he is going to be in 6th position in the silver class, ahead of James O'Leary, who'll make it 7th despite earlier collisions. It seems that plenty of the silver class have suffered and struggled with that, with Renard Serfontaine and Chris Gebben among those two have hit strife around this 40-minute endurance test of man and machine. But Darren Davies, you have to feel gutted for him, because whether it's disconnection, whether it's crash, 3rd position was on in the AM class. It's a long-awaited podium, or it would have been a long-awaited podium. It's now an even longer-awaited podium for Davies in the AM class. And Jamie Thacker, we go to the lead there because he is leading the AM class. He's got 32 seconds to find for positions ahead. He's not bothered about that one bit, because Serafino Gabino is right behind him. As off goes Steve Desert. Steve Desert's another man to have crashed on the last lap This isn't a podium, so it's not as gutting, but 9th place he was, and that would have been 7th in class, and now that's going to go to Andrew Eden. So plenty of drivers falling by the wayside. And Steve Desert, well, it's more last lap misery for the Flying Dutchman. He crashed from a strong position, didn't he, in race number 1? He's crashed from an even stronger position in race number 2. And Steve Desert is off he goes. And what was 7th in class is now way back. He's going to be retired. He's going to be behind Eden. He's going to be behind the recovering Daniel Grossman. And Paul Vidler even might have a say at getting ahead of him as well. So that is disastrous really for Steve Desert, as Serafino Gabina does indeed take what would be 9th position now from Jamie Thacker. Thacker, sensible driving once again. I can't impress upon you enough how good this job is from him, because he's had no luck at all before his class win earlier on in the evening. No luck at all earlier in the season. He lost really a class win at Bathurst through no fault of his own. He's had plenty of collisions that weren't all his fault that took him out of potential podiums and class wins. But to be 32 seconds off the lead, or off of the next car, and not worry about that at all, shows a drive of real maturity there from Jamie Thacker, if he can keep it going. As someone who can't keep it going is Serafino Gabino. He goes off and into the wall, but he's going to recover the Aston Martin, and that's not going to affect Thacker one bit. So they go into the carousel. It's not damaging that much for the Aston Martin driver, but it's a little bit of a foible. Unfortunately for him, the Italian, we caught it on camera. So that's Desert dropping now all the way back, as you can see, as the timing updates. Richard Gearman, 13th, is the next car along. He's had a pretty steady race, the Dutchman, starting from the pit lane, but he's got up into 4th, so he's recovered really well, Richard Gearman. He's got past Miguel Silva, as we saw earlier on. Silva, we should be given a shout out to as well, because it's going to be his first podium in AM class in a considerable amount of time. He's currently in 13th, and another man to have driven really sensibly. He's got 30 seconds behind the leader of the AM class, but we're going to go to the leader overall, and the leader, as ever, is Jared Vermeulen. He's just coming through the final couple of corners now, had a couple of showboaty moments a little bit earlier on, but Vermeulen now is going to just bring the car through the final couple of corners. He's going to take the acclaim of the marshals. There he goes. Going to take the acclaim of his team, and going to take the acclaim of the checkered flag waver, because he wins round number 10, or race number 10, at round number 5 of the Formula Racing League Super Sprint Sunday, brought to you by SIMNET. The South African has done an excellent job once again to be the class of the field. Demian van der Waal is going to come around to finish in 2nd position, to underline what might have been for his season, with 2nd place, fully merited results on pace for the Dutchman. And Morgan Grace is going to complete a double podium round. The Welshman bringing himself back into contention for positions higher up the championship standings in 3rd position. So well done to Morgan Grace in 3rd position. Marcelin Brustulli had to fight his way, didn't he, for 4th position, but he's going to hold off the attentions of Wouter Hyman. So Brustulli, the combative Canadian, is going to take a well-deserved 4th position, so a strong result for him as to back up a decent race in race number 1 in pass. Wouter Hyman's going to take 5th position to recover from what was a really poor qualifying by his standards, but 5th position will help heal the wound. Backlap Pospisil takes 6th position, and Gordon Brown takes a really comfortable second win of the evening. Really comfortable silver win. He's 7th overall, and he's clear of Luke Richings in 2nd in silver, 8th overall. Serafino Gabino is going to take 9th position. We saw him crash into the wall a little bit earlier on, but the Aston Martin Italian driver in the white, green and yellow livery is got just a couple of corners to go for a really big cheer. It goes up for Jamie Thacker. Jamie Thacker in car number 7 in the AM class has driven excellently to take the AM win, but here comes Serafino Gabino to take the 3rd podium position in the silver class. Jamie Thacker is going to take the class win, and an excellent AM class win it is for Jamie Thacker. Really well deserved and a really mature drive. Andrew Eden is going to come round to take 7th in the pro class and 11th overall, with Richard Gearman surviving really to take 4th position in silver and 12th overall. So Richard Gearman started from the pit lane, has not exactly shown a huge amount of speed, has he? But he's recovered to finish in 12th position. Miguel Silva is going to take second in the AM class, so a really good result for Miguel Silva. He is going to be 13th, just ahead of Marco Lino. That's Alexander Glugin, I think, who's just been lapped there. But Marco Lino is going to take 5th in the silver class. Miguel Silva really does deserve all the acclaim that's coming his way as well. Second position as well with Jamie Thacker, the leading AM there. Marco Lino is going to come home in 14th, ahead of Daniel Crossman, who's recovering from his earlier travails. The damaged Ferrari there having to come in and be fixed. But it's a good recovery drive to finish in 15th. And I think he's going to take 8th in class, and not a complete disaster with Jack Barnett quite far back, but a rather lonely 3rd position in the AM class, just nursing what's been a really damaged Ford Mustang. So he's done a really, really good job there. I say lonely, and him being quite far back, that is a mark really of him keeping himself out of trouble and keeping his composure. He's got Dreadlock Steve in the background, I think. That's car 94. That is Lee Colpitts. Lee Colpitts has got past Dreadlock Steve, and I think that's Greg Wood, who's just got past Dreadlock Steve as well. So it's going to be 3rd position for Jack Barnett in class, 16th overall, but a really good return to form for Jack Barnett. He's going to come across the line now to take a well-deserved podium finish, even if it is traditional reasons or not. That is a good result for Jack Barnett, who's kept himself out of trouble. Lee Colpitts is going to come across the line in 17th. That is going to be 6th in silver class. Thrown away a chance of a podium earlier on, but a good recovery nonetheless for Lee Colpitts. Dreadlock Steve is going across the line as well. That's Chris Getman getting himself in all sorts of bother, isn't it? But Dreadlock Steve is going to take the 3rd position, the 4 podium spots in the AM class. I say 4 podium spots, it's the 4th spot, isn't it? There's like 4-way podiums that I'm aware of. James O'Leary is going to finish in, what would be about 19th, I think, but it's going to take what would be 7th in silver to recover well from what was a really difficult opening lap, as Greg Wood, I think, has got past Dreadlocks, who's he got past? A little bit further back, so I'm assuming the car that was in front of Dreadlock Steve was indeed Chris Gebben, but Greg Wood is going to take 5th position in the AM class, so not disastrous, even if he did chuck himself at the wall in avoidance of his teammate or sympathy of his teammates. Or stablemate, that's Owen Harris, who's a little bit further back. Renat Serfontaine, meanwhile, is the next across the line behind Greg Wood. Serfontaine, bit of a well, he's going to suffer quite a bit with his championship because he was 4th earlier on. He's going to be 8th in silver. Greg Wood is going to take 4th in the 5th in the AM class with Renat Serfontaine drop back. He might not cede the lead to Gordon Brown, but Serfontaine is going to finish 8th in the silver class. He's going to finish about 21st or 22nd. Still plenty of drivers who are still quite far back, so it's going to take a little while for the racing to fully finish. Car 777 is next across the line, but it is Owen Harris. It's going to be a full minute behind. He's got Jordan Marshall and Paul Vidler catching up, so that might close up a little bit with, I think, Vian Kruger, who's a couple of laps back, and car 187, that is Jeffrey DeFast finishing. So Serfontaine crosses the line. He's going to finish in 8th in the silver class. Owen Harris has got just enough of a gap over Jordan Marshall, hasn't he? So that's Owen Harris. Marshall looks like he's run slightly wide there, but he's going to recover with Paul Vidler, who's had a pretty torrid return to the championship, reserving this time around, so no mention of him in the championship standings earlier on, and no great shapes, unfortunately, for the young Englishman this time around. So Owen Harris is going to end up 6th, I think, in the AM class, so not disastrous by any stretch of the imagination, but he's going to end up in, he's not going to be 20th. It's a couple of drivers who've since left the server, so Harris is going to complete his run to finish 6th, with Marshall in 9th in the silver class. Harris is going to be 6th in the AM class. So Harris is going to cross the line now. We're nearly finished with Marshall next across the line to take 9th position in the silver class, and Paul Vidler in 22nd overall. He's going to finish, I think, if memory serves, he's about he's 8th, I think, in the pro class, but that is an attritional based reason. Jeffrey DeFast is going to be, well, it's going to be Vian Kruger who's next across the line. Jeffrey DeFast just coming through to the Dirtinger long straight. So Vian Kruger, who's I mentioned earlier on, he's the reason for the prompt for the Patreon server, because he is a Patreon member. He pays his £4 a month, and for that he can change his car, because he has been in a McLaren all season. And Vian Kruger now just coming through the final couple of corners to almost completely finishing, as we have Jared Vermeulen in from a double winner around the green hell. Jared Vermeulen in, and we'll bring him in a little bit later on. This is going to be Vian Kruger across the line, and then it's going to be Jeffrey DeFast to take a distant 7th in the AM class. Kruger will finish 8th in the AM class, and DeFast there, it's not going to be 22nd, it's going to be about 24th, 25th due to other drivers leaving. But here is Jeffrey DeFast. Across the line we go, and the Belgian, who's had a pretty rotten run in his pursuit of the championship, or the AM championship, is going to take 25th overall. It wasn't too far out. But that is it for the racing action. We're going to go and speak to the double winner, Jared Vermeulen. And Jared, I want to ask you a couple of questions in terms of concentration, because it was obvious from probably about half a lap into each race that you were going to win. So with that in mind, with you being a lot quicker, is it just then a case of make sure that you stay switched on and don't try and push yourself 100% because you want to leave a little bit in the tank? Or just talk me through your mindset.
Looking over the first 2 races, I was always lapping within 2.5 tenths or going quicker. So it was just my final lap of the day where I missed the carousel. But otherwise, it was just about, I love this track, so it's just about staying focused and enjoying it, right? I knew that about after the first 3 minutes of the race that it was in my hands and only I could mess it up. So I wasn't pushing 100%, but you're driving comfortably, but just to make sure that you still drive fast enough to stay focused, because on this track it's very easy to crash, and I'm sure many people did. So I was just very happy to keep race 1 no mistakes, race 2 no mistakes until the carousel. So I was very happy with my evening. Overall, I made 0 mistakes the whole evening tonight, so I'm very happy.
So with that in mind, obviously, how quickly are you looking to get the championship sewn up? Because you've got a huge gap now over, you had a huge gap anyway over Daniel Crossman. Crossman didn't have his best evening tonight. He was, I think, 4th or 5th overall in the first race, but he did then slip in race number 2. Is it just a case of get the championship done as quickly as possible so then you don't have to think about it?
So at the moment, I think my gap will probably go up to 20 points looking at tonight. So it's nearly there. But it's okay. I think as long as I don't have any DCs, that's all that I care about, right? I just want to have a race, finish the race, and finish the races that are coming. And if I win it before the final race, that's fine, right? Because of the drop round.
Green light, give us okay.
I think next week it should technically, if I have a good race, finish 1st or 2nd, I think then it's pretty much done because of the drop round factor. So it's all about just, trying to stay focused. Netterton, I was sick and all that stuff, so I made a uncharacteristic move on that guy, Crossman, which fair enough, I got a penalty for it. I put myself in for the penalty. So today I was just happy to be back racing, feeling 100% and just enjoying driving, right? I didn't really care about if anyone was near me. I hope somebody would be, but I was just there to enjoy the Nordschleife, which is the best track on this game. So I'm just very happy.
Well done indeed for your 2 wins. Now, another double winner is Gordon Brown. Gordon, it was a bit hairy in race number 1, but a lot more comfortable race number 2. You've got 2 class wins. That puts you right back in the championship hunt for the silver class. So just how important were they today with your rivals falling by the wayside?
I will let you know in the next 2 minutes, as I'm currently uploading the results to SimNet, because I want to see myself exactly where I the championship.
Back in the season.
Yeah, so I was in 7th, I think, at the start of this race. It was not looking too good, to be honest. But obviously hit the pole position, got the lap in clean. Obviously with the qualifying situation, I felt like everyone got two-shot qualifying, which I think it did actually massively help me, to be honest. But we can't run a race when half the people don't get a chance to qualify. That's not fair. So yeah, quality was monumental in getting ahead of Luke Richings tonight. He was absolutely on one all through race one. I could not let up, and I think there was a moment where I had Clayton make a mistake going up I'm going to call it the toilet section. I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology. It's part of the track where there's this toilets all up the right hand side, portal toilets. That's how I remember, that's what I call it. And he was just kind of recovering at the fast left-hander before the carousel sort of section, and I met him right at the left-hander, and Richings was like 0.2 behind me at the same time. It was a heavy moment. It was so exciting. I don't think I've had as an exciting race as that. It looked like it maybe, on paper lights the flag, but it was not that simple at all. I imagine race 2 was going to be very similar, but then I think Pospisil and I wanted to say Johnny Sharp had an incident at one of the corners at the Nordschleife, and they both kind of rejoined in between me and Luke tonight, which gave me that buffer. I think Crossman was mentioned by yourself earlier on, Jared. I think he had an issue. Drove around him like he wasn't there on the long back straight. So I had a bit of a buffer tonight for race 2, which really helped. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what that's done to the championship now.
So race number 2, you mentioned you were a bit more punchy on lap number 1. Was the idea to try and get a couple of cars in between yourself and Luke Richings and then let the race settle from there? Or was it just I see a gap, I go for it?
Yes and no. I'm in the party with Luke Richings, and I had a conversation with him. I knew he was going for it, basically. He needed to get in front. The thing is with this track, what if you don't make a mistake? It's so hard to overtake. It's just nearly impossible. You can get around in the GP section, but again, you can defend there as well. You can take alternate lines. You can have a good battle, but there's no really anywhere else where it's properly possible to do it unless the car makes a mistake. So it was just a case of keeping the car in between the white lines on the track for most of tonight, and that was the main focus. And like I said, if I could get a buffer, that would help. But yeah, I think in the first couple of corners, it was more the cars ahead were battering each other, and I didn't want to get involved. And one way to not be involved with that is to get in front of them. So if I could get in front of them into the Nordschleife section, it would have definitely helped, because I didn't want to get caught up in any of the shenanigans. But it turned out anyway, time the GP track settled, I was tucked in behind them, so business as usual.
Okay, thank you both so much. Well done to both of you. Congratulations on your double win. I am going to leave it there because of the slightly lengthened nature, I think, of the racing tonight. We'll ignore the gremlins earlier on. It was probably a technology issue, wasn't it, chaps, rather than human error. But just enough to say we've got 2 more rounds to go coming up for the SIMNET SuperSprint Sunday. I've been Jack Prentice. It will be my pleasure to take you through it next week. Take